Greetings, everybody. This is our review for the remainder theorem. Please note that after reviewing a couple of questions, we'll go over some SAT related type problems. So please stay tuned for that at the very end. First, I'm just going to go over this brief, scary theorem that basically you don't really need to know that much. You just need to know that if you ever get a problem and you're on the SAT and it says something about a polynomial and it says something about division and a remainder, you just have to know that if you go ahead and divide by x minus c, it could simplify to f parentheses c, or f of c. All right, so that's a lot of words to note. So let's take a look at how to simplify that or how to solve that in terms of ways that you can understand. So let's say that they wanted to say g of x is a polynomial. Okay, great. So we know that's our polynomial. Your head should be thinking, okay, that means that I need to think about the remainder theorem. And they'll give you some additional information. In this case, they draw us to our attention to let us know that g of 2 equals 5. So what does that mean for us? Well, remember, we say that there's some sort of division. This just indicates that there's some sort of division and then there's a remainder. And that is all you need to know about the remainder theorem. If you have a remainder theorem, you're leading towards the understanding that we're talking about a polynomial, and that if we're talking about a polynomial, there is a potential, more than likely, to be a remainder. So you have to figure out what that remainder is as it relates to the SAT. So, for example, in this case, we're basically saying that g of x divided by, and that's where this theorem comes in, x minus 2. And if you remember in the previous screen, that's where the c comes in. So anything that is in that parentheses, instead of x, we're saying that x equals c. So we have x here, we have c here. And remember, we said that in the previous page that f of x or g of x or L of x or n of x, whatever, divided by x minus c equals something, our remainder, right? So we're basically saying, given this statement above, g of x, that is our f of x, divided by x minus 2, or x minus our c, is going to give us a remainder. That's where that question mark is. And that remainder is 5. So this is basically saying, all right, so g of x is our formula. If I go ahead and divide it by x minus 2, because that's what I'm given in the parentheses, I have a remainder. And by the way, that remainder is 5. That's all this statement is saying. There's no direct question related to this problem. I just wanted to show how the remainder theorem is in real life before we dive into that problem. Okay, so usually when you're given a SAT type problem and it is related to the remainder theorem, there's a couple things that you need to look for. You need to look for that polynomial. So we'll say statement, f of x, g of x, n of x, z of x, or z of c, something. And it'll give you a polynomial statement. So in this case, it is x squared minus gx plus 2. Or they could just give you the stereotypical scenario where they're like, yeah, this is the polynomial. Either way, then you're given some sort of statement that leads you to a c. So remember, x minus c. In this case, they're telling you that the c is 1, i.e. x minus 1. So the goal is to indicate what the remainder is. So we're basically saying that in this case, that if I go ahead and plug in 1 into our problem of the polynomial, so now we're reversing the statement, we can go ahead and find the remainder. So let me repeat that again. In the previous problem, we were given the remainder. In this type of problem, we are not given the remainder. However, we can utilize the remainder theorem to go ahead and find the remainder. So this is another possible scenario. It can come up in your understanding of the remainder theorem. So for example, x squared minus 3x plus 2, we want to find the remainder. So we're going to go ahead and remember we said in the previous page x equals c. And we said that we're dividing here based on the question that it's x minus c. So x minus 1 equals, well, we're trying to find c. So c is positive 1. It's going to be the opposite. So we go ahead and plug in 1. So we have 1 squared minus 3 times 1, my great handwriting there, plus 2. Okay, so we go ahead and plug everything in. Now for the digital SAT, you are allowed to use a calculator. Just make sure that when you're using any sort of calculator, whether on screen or whether on your handheld device, you are putting in appropriate parentheses so it does recognize it properly. And in this case, you would have 1 minus 3 plus 2. And that's going to give you 0. So what we're saying in this statement essentially is that 0 is our remainder. I'm going to put a big giant R. So basically we're saying if we have x squared minus 3x plus 2 and we go ahead and divide it by x minus 1, we get a remainder of 0 because we plugged it in. Okay, let's tie this all together. Now we can go ahead and go into a typical problem that you might see on the exam. So now let's tie this all together. And we know based on this statement, you don't really have to do that much, right? You know that they told you that g of 2, when they go plug it in, that it gives you a remainder of what? 5. Great, that's perfect. So we know that it's not going to be 0. So we can eliminate answer choice A and answer choice B because we know that our remainder is going to be 5. So anything that doesn't say 5 is false as a remainder. And the C choice says it's 2, not correct. And then we're left with answer choice D. So D is the correct answer. That is the sure, fast way to answer that problem based on the identification of what you're given and using the remainder theorem. I hope this helps.
Feel free to explore additional test preparation resources, such as AP Biology, multiple choice questions, free response questions, or worksheets in general. If you're looking for additional math help and resources, you can explore those as well, especially for standardized tests such as SAT or PSAT. Don't forget to subscribe and follow.